right. Eric, who do you want to take next?
Ooh, I really would. I think I want to talk to Stephen in Washington.
All right, let's do it.
All right.
Stephen, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey.
How are you doing today?
Doing well. You're a little bit muffled. Can you come a little bit closer to your phone?
Thought I did. Yeah, I'm
Okay, perfect.
got it right up next to my ear. Is that better?
That's better. What can we help you with today? What's your question?
Yeah, so I live in a very rural part of the country, and the church that I deconverted from, they're not particularly conservative, but they are very focused on prepping.
Yep.
And yeah, so I've been kind of indoctrinated into this idea that like there's some kind of impending doom out there that is going to come down on all of us, and whether it takes the form of the next world war or the next economic crisis or, you know, any of that variety of thing, there's always this part of me that is just certain that's going to happen. And
Oof.
I was kind of wondering, how can I apply some skepticism here and maybe make that not the way my brain works anymore? Because it's kind of tiresome.
Yeah.
I feel that so deeply. I grew up in a family that was convinced that the world was going to end before I turned 18. So literally every year past the age of 18, I've been like, oh, for a year. Didn't think I was getting one of these. I think there are a couple different things at play here. There's definitely the religious element to it. Is your church kind of like rapture, tribulation, Armageddon kind of deal, or is it more of a political thing?
Not at all.
Okay.
Actually, it's they're actually very liberal. I was originally Episcopalian. I've called into the atheist experience a couple of times. I don't know if you guys keep up with that side of atheist YouTube or not, but
not really.
The whole thing is that like they're very liberal, and it's a very kind church, very accepting of everybody. There's no real political thing about it. It's just, I feel like it's the area that we live in. We're in the Pacific Northwest, and it's a very rural part of the Pacific Northwest.
That's scary country.
It's just kind of it's just a mindset up here of people that think that the world is going to end, and it doesn't really matter if it lines up with any other beliefs that you might have. It's just kind of a certainty for everyone out here.
Interesting. Is it kind of like tied to the big one? Like this concept of, the big one's coming. That was a
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, when's the next big crash going to come? When is the season's crop going to fail so bad that we have to, it just, there's a lot of different things that they say could be the next big one.
Yeah.
But there's just a consensus that there is something coming and you have to prepare for it.
Well, I mean, here's the thing, Stephen, and I'm probably not the correct person to talk to about this because I am generally an anxious person. So I would agree to an extent that there is always going to be something coming at some point, and the best thing to do is to take reasonable steps to prepare for whatever. There's a big freeze coming again, probably this winter in Texas. So we went ahead and I was like, we're going to get solar chargers for our phones, and we're going to get
bottled water
and toilet paper. We're stocking up. So like there's a level of reasonable preparation that you can take for things. It's when it becomes crippling and something that interferes in enjoyment of other things that it's a problem. And I think honestly, for me, the best thing for that has been just going to therapy and getting that out and having somebody come back and be like, all right, here is reasonable preparation and reasonable anxiety about actual things that could happen. And then here is where it starts getting into maybe fixation or maybe just, that mindset that is so permeating this part of the world, right? So it might be very useful to just sit with somebody, a professional, and be like, hey, here's what I'm anxious about. Can you help me figure out which ones are actual things that are good to prepare for and think about, and which are probably not going to happen that I can kind of put down?
I kind of want to ask a question or two, if that's all right.
Yeah, go for it.
Stephen, you still there?
Yeah, by all means.
Okay. So, Stephen, the anxiety that you have around the end of the world, in quotes, that's what's in the notes. Is it different from anxiety around death as a concept? Or your own mortality?
I don't have a fear of death or anything like that. I never really have. It's more of a...
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask you to elaborate.
Yeah. It's more of a... Okay, so let me give some context here. So the church that I was part of, a lot of the people that are in it are ex-military, ex-cops, or emergency responders. So I'm already in on the, have backup water, have backup food, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But I'm a young dad. I've got 2 daughters, and the driving force for most of my life, being in the church, has been to kind of prepare them for when I have to go out and, battle for resources or protect my land at the end of a gun, stuff like that.
Can I rephrase this in Christianese a little bit?
Absolutely.
Would you?
I speak fluent Christian.
Okay, good. Would you say that it's not fear of the rapture, but it's fear of tribulation?
Tribulation, yes.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense now. Okay.
Yeah, honestly, Stephen, I love to hear that you're thinking about this in the sense of, hey, I've got kids. How is this impacting them as well? And how is this going to impact my ability to be a good parent to them? Because that's something my dad never did. He would invite strangers into the house to take us all into the basement and teach us how to hide machine guns and guitar cases in case we needed them for some reason. So there is a level of paranoia that I have specifically because of that. So the fact that you're thinking about this and going, okay, what's reasonable to prepare my children for, and what might be influencing them negatively in a way that they don't need to be, is huge. So thank you for just doing that level of introspection.
Yeah. And there is a difference between validating a hobby and it becoming dangerous, like you were saying, P. I kind of want to tie that back around to that original point of practicing skepticism.
Yeah.
Do you kind of recognize that it's likely that there's not going to be a world-ending, catastrophic event in the next few hours? Well, you have to, because that's living your life. It's application of that. It doesn't necessarily give you a perfect answer, but what it does is it says, hey, you're going to have to live your life the best you can regardless. And so if you're spending more time upset about what might be, you're doing that at the expense of what's happening currently. And that's a really rough place to be. And I want to reiterate V's comment that cognitive behavioral therapy is going to be your best way to go, because you have a lifetime of building up these neural pathways that have reinforced this kind of thinking for your entire life. Your brain has wired itself to think like this, and CBT can help. Well,
we're not diagnosing or giving therapy advice, but in our experience.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a fact, right? If you think about something long enough a certain way, you fall into that pattern of thought.
Neuroplasticity is absolutely a thing.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Stephen, what are your thoughts? We've been going back and forth between us for a little bit.
Yeah. So that's really the calculus that I'm trying to do right now, is how much of this is reasonable? Where does it cross the line into, almost like paranoia? And, the fact that this has essentially been the driving force of my life for the last 10 years is, it's really challenging, and trying to find something, because most of the time when I'm going through my day, when I was in college, it was, okay, what am I doing, and could I be doing something towards my degree instead? But over the last 10 years, it's been more of, what am I doing now, and could I be preparing in some way?
Yeah.
And it's that constant draw to go back into the, okay, when was the last time I checked my stockpile? When was the last time I checked the expiration dates on my food? And I catch myself doing those kinds of things, or shopping online for stuff that because this is an unreasonable belief, I clearly don't need those things.
Right.
And it's really drawing away from my family life, and it's really putting kind of a weight on my mind. And it's less of a hobby now and more of just a bad habit that I'm trying to drop. So
yeah,
really
it sounds like a compulsion.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
It's not to the point that it's like completely disruptive to my life, which I think is where it falls into the like medical, psychological side of things. But really what I'm trying to figure out is, what are the kinds of questions that in those moments I should be asking myself, like to kind of suss out whether or not the specific thing I'm doing right in that moment is that reasonable for everything that's going on?
Yeah, that is a good question. And I'm going to preface this by saying, I think honestly, knowing how I felt about things like the end of the world and the big one and preparing for things, and hearing a lot of that in what you're saying, I do recommend talking to somebody about it, just because skepticism is not just an internal way of thinking. It's also making sure that you have the resources you need to live your best life. And that is one option. That said, something that I've found really helpful personally is to think about things in terms of timeline, right? Kind of building off what Eric said. If you don't think that the world is going to end in the next 5 days, then what is more important to do? To prep for something that might happen next month, or to make sure that you're ready for the next 5 days? So in those moments where you're like, okay, I could be doing this thing that will help me get ready for a presentation tomorrow, or, get Christmas presents for my family, or I could be doing this other thing that's preparing for something far out in advance that may or may not happen. A very reasonable, I think, way to look at that is to say, okay, I'm going to take care of the things that need to happen now because the timeline is shorter now. And then if I have additional time, I'll go check on those other things. But for me, that's really helped, and given like a timeline to these events and being like, all right, I'm prepping for the things that need to happen now. And when I have free time, I will prep for the stuff that might happen later.
Constructive prepping. I like it.
Yeah, just thinking about what is needed today, what is needed tomorrow, and being very honest with yourself. If you can do that and that helps, that's great. If you're still finding it difficult to move forward with preparing for this upcoming week, then that's a really good little red flag to notice about yourself. And just that you might need some additional help with that.
Yeah, and prepare to unpack. You're gonna find that there's a lot of language that you may use, and a lot of patterns that are inadvertently tied to this one behavior that you're trying to change.
Yeah.
And so it's going to take time, because everything needs to kind of restructure. But give yourself some patience, and Was there anything else, V?
Also, maybe just, I don't know how online you are, but maybe take a little bit of a break. I know that I tend to be a lot more pessimistic about the direction of the world when I'm online constantly than when I've kind of disconnected for a little bit. And I know that can be nerve-wracking in its own way. Things are happening and I don't know what they are. But it can be helpful to be like, okay, in this moment, am I safe? Is there anyone right now trying to harm me or the people I care about? If the answer is no, then you're good for right now. You're solid, right? And that doesn't speak to what's going to happen next year, but it can feel like everything is coming at you all at once, especially with the entire world on our phone right next to our face, right? But to be able to step away from that and be like, okay, this isn't going to ruin my life today. Maybe tomorrow, but right now I'm okay. And everyone around me that I care about and that I'm protecting is okay. So yeah, Stephen, I hope that helps.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I think a big source of anxiety for me right now is a lot of my family members are very, very right wing, and on a fairly regular basis, I'll find a Breitbart or the Blaze links in my emails.
Oh gosh, yeah, delete those. Just get rid of them.
I think I'll take a break from paying attention to that. Maybe kind of reassess a little bit. The therapy thing might be a little bit tougher these days, but I think your suggestions is a good starting place. So
good.
I really appreciate it.
Well, good luck, and thank you for calling in.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care. Stephen was nice.
Stephen is nice, and I feel that so deeply. There are so many things to be legitimately anxious about right now that last year, 2 years ago, we wouldn't have even thought were things. So, like, absolutely, I get it. But you were spot on. Is this something I need to worry about right now? Is this something that is going to hurt me today? If so, absolutely, go for it. And if you've done some preparation, then you're all that more prepared. But
that preparation is supposed to help you relieve that anxiety.
That's a really good point. If you have prepared for something and it has not alleviated the anxiety, but rather made you feel like you need to prepare even more, that's a good sign that it might not be actually concerned about that event, but rather just a broader worldview like Stephen was talking about. Mm-hmm. Yeah, really, really good.